Okay. Last night, I had a dream that was so strange that it's been sticking with me since I woke up. I woke up at 5 o'clock because of it, and I just kind of stared at my wall for a moment because I wasn't sure what exactly had just happened. I was still so disturbed by it that I was actually fearful at the idea of sharing the dream with other people. Now I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's just a dream, but it felt so real in the moment that I was terrified of anybody realizing that I had even conceived this in my mind. So, I'm going to begin this with stating that within the dream, I did have a family, and the parents were not that of my real ones. I think that's very important to stress, being where the story goes. My father did not look like my father, nor was he him at all. And my mother is the same. She didn't look like her, and she wasn't her. But within this dream, I don't remember how it started, but I remember I came from a family in which my father, not including me, had 4 daughters and 3 sons. They were within this a cappella group of sorts, but not the modern day kind. I'm talking like the type that you would see within churches. And whenever I would catch a glimpse of them within the dream, it was never physically. I wouldn't physically stumble upon them. It was more just I would see visions of them in my mind's eye, and they would always be standing within this almost triangular pattern, in which the oldest one was always standing within the center, and then it was the second to oldest beside them, the second to youngest, and then the youngest, except, of course, on the male side, they didn't have that, so it stopped at the second to youngest, if that makes sense. And when I say this, I mean like the 2 oldest were standing next to each other and then go down the line. But within that group there was an obvious difference. Not because they all looked related, of course. They were all of my parents' children. But within the dream, they were obviously lacking on the male side because of the fact that there wasn't a younger sibling to play the highest note within their group. And they were always dressed within, like, white robe. Like, it was like white, almost like I'm not religious, not strongly at least, so I don't really know the term. I'm picturing like a bishop, where it's like the white with the little sash on it. And I think the sash was either like a dark red or just black, and I can't recall. Also, all the children were like dark-haired and like white. But anyways, within this dream, the child that my father lacked, he wanted me to conceive within the dream. And obviously, ew, yucky, gross, but for whatever reason, I complied. I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And I don't remember how the child was conceived. All I remember is that within the next scene, I was carrying my father's child. And when I say that, I want to stress, I don't want to know how this child was conceived. I'd rather it remain the biggest mystery of all time. My apologies. But, I conceived the child, and one of my worst fears is pregnancy. I find it horrific. The fact that it's so alien, it's like you're carrying something that isn't of this world within you, and I know that's like a very probably childish thing to say, but it just reminds me of like alien movies when there's something crawling around and kicking and ripping through your skin of your stomach, and yet you can't do anything because it's occupying you as a host. And I know I'm going a little far with that, but that's just how I feel. So I was terrified of this. I was going to my mother in the dream and expressing how terrified I was, and she wasn't really getting it. Like, she would have sympathy for me, but I don't think she truly understood what I was going through. And I remember I went to the hospital at one point to check on the baby, and my mother came with me. And as I was there, I was terrified because I also had a horrible fear of hospitals, of course. Just to go along with the baby fear. But I was within one of the rooms. They were doing, like, I don't know, what's it called, an ultrasound? Whatever, on my stomach. And as I was there, I kind of came to terms with the fact that I was going to have this child. I still wasn't exactly, like, happy. I was still, like, scared. But I was like, okay, I'm going to have this child, and it's going to be fine. It's going to be healthy. Everything they were telling me was that it was going to be healthy. I wish I wasn't dying, sorry. Oh my god. This happens every morning. But everything they were telling me was that the child was going to be healthy, so I didn't really have any, like, fears about the child at this point. It was more my own fears regarding my own self. And I realized that this was all going to be okay while I was sitting there. I realized that even if I don't necessarily want to have this child, it's going to be healthy and I'm going to be able to raise it. And it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be fine. So I got the news that the child would be a female. And I don't remember if I went to my father, but I remember at one point we talked. I was able to reach out to him in some way, whether it be physically or through a phone. But we talked, and I said that it would be a female. And he just kind of paused. And it's almost like he wasn't sad about it. It was more like he was disappointed about it. He didn't have the same excitement as he had previously. Like, when I say excitement, I mean he was happy that I would be conceiving this child for him, that I would be making the sacrifice. And yet, when I told him, all of that kind of just left his character immediately. And it's like in those moments, I don't remember if he walked away or if I hung up a phone, but all of a sudden he was gone, and I was thinking to myself that this was never going to end, that he wasn't going to be happy until he had a male. I remember that caused me so much fear, and this is the dread that I'm talking about, because I was now happy to have this child. I was happy to raise it, and it also became very apparent with his disappointment that it was no longer his child. I was no longer conceiving a child for him. It would be my own at this point, and there was nothing I could really do about that. He wasn't going to take it at this point. It wasn't what he wanted, so he was throwing it out. But within the dream, this really hit me hard because I had this realization: it's not going to end until he gets a male. It's either going to be he continually asks me, or in my dream state, the more likely option is that he would move on to my daughter. Once she's the age, he would ask her to produce a male, that he would ask her to conceive a male child. And although I'm looking back at this, and of course this isn't realistic, of course, I mean, I'm not talking about the selfish nature of the act. I'm focusing more on the fact that if he did go to my child, obviously his children wouldn't need anybody anymore because they'd probably all be grown up and be in the same vocal range anyway. So having another person there to do that end of the spectrum within the singing, it wouldn't make sense logically. But within the dream, this is the dread that gripped me, was that this evil action would turn to my daughter. This thing that was meant to be pure and come into this world with such innocence would very quickly be corrupted by somebody's selfish act. And that is the dread that I've been living with ever since I woke up at like 9:30 maybe, and it's 10:06 right now. Maybe 9:20 actually I woke up, I don't even know. I just know that this dream has been sitting with me and I needed to record it because it's in so much detail. And I was talking about, like, I always recite my dreams to myself if I can remember them clearly. And as I was hearing myself say this dream, I was like, if I don't record this, I will be damned. Like, there's no way I can go about my day without hearing this again, ever. So that's the end of the dream. I do think me and Mama and Dad watched a series on, it was called Don't Come Home, and it was really great. And it was about male betrayal, and there was a woman who was pregnant, and cycles of endless pain within the universe. But it's definitely inspired by that, of course. It must have been within my subconscious, whatever. But that's it. Goodbye. I need to get to work.